Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into an exciting and essential topic for everyone working with microservices, and that is introducing YARP, a powerful tool that can function as both an API gateway and a reverse proxy. If you have been struggling to manage the complexities of your microservices architecture, or if you are looking to enhance the security and performance of your APIs, then this video is for you. We will explore what YARP is and why it is such a game changer. I'll also walk you through a real-world scenario that shows you how you can integrate this. If you're interested in other tools such as Ocelot, don't forget to check out my previous video on using Ocelot as an API gateway. The link is in the video description. Imagine you are running an online store with various microservices handling different functions. And these functions could be inventories, user management, order processing, and so on, many more. Without an API gateway, each service needs to be exposed individually, isn't it? Making it a challenge to manage security, load balancing, and routing efficiently. Here is where YARP comes into play. YARP stands for Yet Another Reverse Proxy. It is a highly customizable and performant reverse proxy library which was developed by Microsoft. As a reverse proxy, YARP forwards client requests to appropriate back-end services, and that is talking about your APIs. So effectively masking the complexity of your microservices architecture from the end user. This not only simplifies client interaction, but it also enhances security by acting as a single entry point. So all that the client needs to do here is to make a request through a single entry point. And now within that, this YARP is going to take this entry point and now send it to the various microservices connected together in your YARP configuration. So you're seeing that YARP, which is known as a reverse proxy, which takes a request from the client and now push it to an appropriate API service as a backend. That is the reason why we call it reverse proxy. It is also known as an API gateway because it takes things further. It provides some features such as routing, load balancing, and even more advanced capabilities like rate limiting and authorization. This ensures that your microservices can scale efficiently, remain secure, and handle varying load without breaking a suite. All these features that I am talking about, we cannot implement this in a single video. So I'm going to make this in parts, and maybe at the end of the day, I'm going to combine all together as a full course for you. So you can watch the part to follow, or you wait for the full course. But well, I suggest you pick the pieces. All right, so let's see how we can integrate this. We're going to create a solution. We're going to add maybe 2 API projects. We're going to add another API, another web application for empty one, and that is where we're going to configure our YARP in it as a reverse proxy, and at the same time, our API gateway. So launch a Visual Studio 2022 or higher. Let's create a solution. So create new project, and in here, you make sure you choose solution. So that is a blank solution. You can find it from here. So you make sure you search it for if you don't have it here. Then let's give it a name. We can say this is demo YARP. So in microservices, and here I'm going to name this as solution. Forget about the solution name. Okay. And that is YARP. So it should be P, not T. Great. YARP. So let's click on create and get this solution created. After that, you're going to add 2 API projects. Maybe you're going to have a product of retrieving or returning. Maybe it could be, what do you think should we do? Product? Others, as we did. Okay, we can try that as well. So let's add project in here. Now with this project, we're going to add our web API, and here we're saying that this is product API. Let's add this to the solution, and here you want to use controller, so you make sure you check that, and you want to also use Swagger, OpenAI support. So let's check them and click on create. After that, you're going to also add another one, which could be others. So now this has been created successfully. Let's right click on solution. Let's go to add and add another project. It's the same type that you're going to select. And here I'm going to say that this is other API. Let's click on this. And also we want to expose controllers and Swagger for our visual access. So we have 2 projects added. Let's go and add our proxy. That's a reverse proxy. Yep. And with this, we're going to, since we're not going to expose any controller, we can add a new project in here. And we're going to choose web. So search for web in here. Now let's go in for empty project. So from this web, we see we have ASP.NET Core Web API. And we are not looking for that. We need for this ASP.NET Core empty. So this is what we want to use. So make sure you have this. And I'm going to say this is, since we are creating microservices, you want this to work as an API gateway. So I'm going to say this is an API gateway. Okay. Now let's click on next. And with this, we want to just create that. So click on create and get this project created. So when you check your solution, you're supposed to have 3 projects in here. API gateway for ASP.NET Core empty project. Then we have 2 API template projects added. We have 3. All right, so let's configure our product. Now you're not going to connect, you're not going to do any massive work in here, right? No intense work. We're going to return just a controller, maybe an action method of hard-coded data in it, because the focus is not by implementing this. The focus is implementing the YARP to communicate as an API gateway in here. So I've already made another video, a microservice video. So if you haven't checked that one out, I've put the link in there. So it's a playlist that you can go through them one after the other. All right, so let's go to our products, and from our controller, let's change this controller to product controller. Let's provide some of the, let's assume this is a product. Well, we can provide some products in here. So without wasting time, I have provided this: clothes, bags, television, shoes, phone, accessories, whatever. You can add yours. And let's provide this as product. Okay, so when you come here, all that you want to do is, let's remove this. We know it's a product controller. Let's set this as an API/controller. So that's going to be the product. And in there, we want to make this as action results. And now this action results, all that we're going to do here is return. Okay, then let's pass in the product, because that is a list that we have. So we pass in our product like this, and that is all. Let's go back to our other API. And now in here, we go to our controller the same. Let's make sure we change this to other. So that is an other API. And here, we have to make an order, isn't it? So let's return maybe an order here. Let's just create some fake data here. So right click on the API project. We're going to add the class. Maybe this is going to be order. And now with this order, we want to make this as a record. So let's say here we have maybe an ID. So that is an order ID. Let's say it is an ID. We have name. Then we have product name. Let's assume this is our order, right? So we have let's make this as, yeah, that's the client's name. Okay, and we have product name. Okay, now let's go back. Order controller, and now in here we can remove this. Let's remove everything from here. This should return order. And in here, let's create a list. So we said this others is equal to new, then list of order. All right, since we are having, okay, so let's have a look. Now we're gonna have this others dot. So we can add range. So within this, we're gonna have a list, and maybe I have an order. So let me just grab this here, very simple, and let's paste it. Okay, so you can see from here that we're having a list. So that is an order. We're adding a range, and in here we specify a new order. So these are the names, and these are the item that they have ordered. Let's assume this is working. Then aside from that, we have to return this other, since here it is returning IEnumerable. We have to return this others. Okay, so we have our two APIs working. Now let's go and make sure we format the address or the port to what we want. So from our product should run on the port of maybe 5000, and now the others should run a port of 5001. So go to properties, line settings, and now from HTTP, let's set this to maybe 5001. Then the same in here. Let's go to the other API, also properties, line settings, and I'll do same. So here is 5002 for the HTTP. Okay, let's save all. So we have our two APIs running. Let's configure startup project. So I click on this, go to configure startup project. Let's use multiple, and for now we are starting everyone. So start. Maybe you can start without debugging. So apply this, and now let's start. So you can see that the app is ready. Now this is our API, our YARP API gateway, and that is our 501 for our product. Not this one. So what you haven't, this is another API. I think one is not ready. Let's check it out. And we have our product. So our product is not ready. Let's run this again. All right, so we have them working. So this is our YARP API gateway. We have our product. So if I click on get execute this, we have to get a list of products. And also for the others, if I click on get others, I have to get the list of others. Great. So these two APIs are working, and they are all having a different port, as you can see from here. Now let's go and configure this in YARP. In order to configure that, there are two ways that we can do it. We can configure one in our app-setting.json file, or we can create a class and I configure that in there. When you do it in the app-setting.json file, if your app is in a production mode, you can just go ahead and make some configuration in there. You can change something and it's still going to pick it up and work. But when you do it in a class, unless you build this application, the project again. But well, I'm going to show you these two ways so that you pick one for yourself. Okay. So let's see how we can do that. First, let's talk about how we can configure this in our app-setting.json file. So now that we've seen that they are working, let's close this. let's go to our API gateway and I'll go to app.setting.json file. And now here we're going to work it out here. But before that, let's install the package. So right click on the dependencies, go to manage NuGet packages. And all that you need to do here is to type in YARP, Y-A-R-P, to get this package installed. That is this YARP. And wait for this YARP.reverse proxy. Make sure you install this package to this project. So it is done, as you can see, and I believe yours is also done. Great. Now let's go back to our app.setting.json, and here we're going to create a section. Now this is going to be the section that we're going to read. Now with each, we're having a list, a key, and a list, which has a list of values that we're going to provide. Okay. Now let's first start. So all that you need to do here is to pass in a name, give it a name. And now here, since we're going to work with an API gateway, well, we can make it a reverse proxy or API gateway. You can give it any name of your choice. Let's say this is an API gateway, although it's a reverse proxy because it's going to take requests from client and now wrap it or map it to the backend services. That's our API. And it also going to act as an API gateway because it's going to implement some features such as load balancing, routing, and a lot. So we can call it API gateway or reverse proxy. So let's say I'm going to set this my API gateway. Well, you can give it a name of your choice. Now within this, let's open it. And here we need to specify our route. So let's say this is our route. And this is a list. So you have to make sure it's an array. Now within this list, we're going to provide our route. Now, for each route supposed to be unique, so you have to provide a unique ID. So here, this is our product route. So let's say this our product route. So our product route, it should be in code like this. So product route. Okay. And now, once you're done with that, we're going to also open it. Now, this product route needs a cluster ID. So what is this cluster ID going to be used for? And that's what it's going to use to match or to map to the actual endpoint. So let's give it a cluster ID. Now, this should also be a unique, and we're going to also implement this. So let's say this is product cluster. Aside from this, we need to provide our match. So we having a match, and now with this match, all that it is requesting for is, in your controller, in this API controller, you may have a lot of endpoints. In this case, you can decide to match a specific endpoint, maybe get only, post only, or delete only. But in this case, you want to match everything. And in order to match everything, it's very simple and easy to implement it. Watch it. Just provide path. And after that, all that you need to do here is it has to be in this and add this to represent all and add the catch all. And that is all. So any endpoint or any route which is passed on to this endpoint is going to be catch up and now direct it to or map it to the endpoint, to that specific API controller endpoint. So now that we are done with our route, we have our cluster ID and our route in here. We have our route name specified. We need to now define the cluster. So remember that we have a cluster ID provided. That is a product cluster, right? So we're going to be using this product cluster in the inner cluster section. So let's see. Now you make sure it is outside the route. So here we have our comma. Then we're going to provide our clusters. Now this clusters, what is the name that you created? Product cluster. So you can just copy this. So you're going to define this. Now this cluster, we want to say that the first part here, it is destination. So with the destinations, is a list. So in here, we can say that we're going to map this. We are having a destination 1. This is mapping to only a single endpoint, okay? And that is a single API address. So we're going to say give it a name as, product destination. Now this product destination, all that I need to do here is to specify the address. And now with this address, we're going to say this HTTP. Then we have our local host. Now this product, so the port here is 5001, and that is all. So we are done with our product. Let's go and configure this for the other one is what? Others, right? So here we have our route. We're going to copy this. So this is a closing. So we're going to copy this. So let's open it. Let's have comma separated. Then let's paste this. Okay. Now this is not product. It's going to be other route. And now the cluster ID is going to be also other because it must be unique. Take note. Now you're also going to match everything from our endpoint. Then let's define the destination. So we're going to copy this. Then where we have our, this is our cluster. So you have to copy this. Let's close this. Grab it. Open it. Give comma. Separate it. And add another one. Now here, this is going to be other as specified above here. And that is a product or other destination. And the port here, it is 02. You see? So anytime you make an endpoint to this, you call this endpoint. It's going to catch it up from here, from all route they're going to provide, match it up to this endpoint, and it's going to call it from our service that has been created already. The same thing applies to the other. Now that we are done with this, we need to read these configuration settings in the program and now include our service and our pipeline. So go to the solution from the same API gateway, go to your program.cs file, and then in here, we need to configure that. Okay, so here, let's see from this is our API. Okay, not the other. I opened the other, not the other. So we can remove this. And once you have the reverse proxy installed, we're going to say that builder.services.add. We're going to have reverse proxy. It's over here. Then in here, we need to have builder.section or configuration.get section. And now, what is the name of the section that we need? That's an API gateway. Aside from that, we can have a look at dot. Oh, okay. So this should be out. Yes, and that is dot load from. So load from config, and that is where you're going to provide this. So this is a configuration file you want to load from. So now that we are done with this, all that you need to do here is to add the pipeline. So we say app.use reverse proxy. It's over here. Maybe not use, it should be map reverse proxy. That is all that we need to do. We are done. See, configuration or configuring this is very simple, isn't it? Now let's run it and see. So let's go and also make sure that the API gateway is running on port of maybe 5000. That's a default or a base port that you want to expose to clients. Now this is running on 7. So let's make this 5000. So when we check here, we know that our API product is running on 5001. Our order is running on 5002. And our API gateway also running on 5000. Yes, that's a 5000. Okay, good. So now that we have this, we can save this and let's run this. Let's make sure we have our postman ready because that is what we're going to use to make a request. So let's wait while it runs. Whoa, so we're having an issue here. The service collection cannot be modified because it is read-only. Whoa, so you can see that I believe you've done these changes, isn't it? Check it out. This shouldn't be here. It should be before the app built. So this should be out. Sorry for that. I didn't see it. Did you see it? Okay, so it should be here before this app built. Okay. So let's rerun it again. So we're having an issue here. Have you seen that? Did you also get the same issue? Well, then let's go up and check this. So when it comes to our app settings, where we have our order route and product routes, they are all matching to the same. So this is a match section. Let's figure it out. Oh, okay. So it should be, aside from this, should be slash, right? Then API, I know slash. And now with this is product. So it should be product slash that. Then we have in this. So I think this is the correct one. How did I miss this? Okay. So we do same to the other, and it should also be an API slash other, then this. All set and done. All right, let's do it again. Yeah, so you see we have them active, and this is our API gateway. So we can also try again with the other and make sure that it returns what is supposed to return. Then we check our product, it is the same. Now let's pull out our postman, and that is a 700. Oh yeah, I changed it to 700 from 5000. Okay, so now in here I'm going to make a request, and that is a GET request, and it is coming from, whoa, I copy this and see what is coming. So that is an HTTPS. We have a local host with our port that we specified, and we want to get product. And now the route here is an API product, isn't it? So let's try to see if we're going to get it. And yeah, we have it. Let's try our others. Okay, so others not found. API other. Well, let's go and check from API other, and then everything. Oh yeah, this should work, isn't it? So other cluster we have same, and I set 5002 for others. Other cluster we have our other destination and address. When we check our, let's see, is our others is running on 5002 slash other. When you go and check from the controller, oh okay, so here should be an API, right? But all the same, we could have configured that properly. Let's do it again. And now also, so now it is ready. Let's give it a try. So API others, and well, we have the others. So we have it. Now you can see that configuring this is very simple. Now it's going to route all your client requests, and make sure it maps to the preferred backend address, and that's our APIs. Now, what if in case you don't want to use this app settings file configuration in the app settings, but you want to have a class for this? Well, let's see how we can do that. So here we're going to create a class. So in our API, right click on this, let's add a class with, and maybe let me add folder first, and I'm going to say this is configurations, and from the configuration let's add a class. Now this class is going to be basic configuration, so let me give it, so basic configuration, that is a class. This class should be a static, so let's make this a static class, and we're going to provide our routes and also our clusters as we did in the app settings. So it should also return a read-only list. So let's have our public, and this is a static, I read only list, and now here it is route config. So let's say this is get route. Now in here we want to return, that's a new list. And now with this list, let's first define the first route. Okay, now under define this first route, you're going to say this is new route config. So with this new route config, we can say that we have provide a route ID. And remember the route ID? That is a product route. Then aside from that, we also need to, now this must be unique. So maybe I can put it in here for you to know. This is unique identifier. Okay, that it should provide for this route. Then the next one that I need to provide here, it is a cluster ID. Now this cluster ID is going to be mapped in the clusters section. So here we're going to say that this is product cluster. And here we are going to say that the ID of this that we have provided is this ID. Let me just put down some, maybe construct some more English in here. So this ID is of the cluster this route maps to. So that is it means you're going to make a reference to this cluster, this ID. So you should not forget this. The next one here is we need to provide a match. Do you remember in our app settings, we need to provide match after this. When you cross check, we have our route ID, cluster ID, and our match. So let's also configure that. And you know, this should come with comma, isn't it? Should comma separated. And we're going to say this is match. Now this match equals new, that is new route match. And in here, let's provide the path as we did in there. So the path here, it is API and it is product. And here we're going to catch all. So we put in this wildcard and we're going to say that, hey, catch everything that's going to come in. And let me give it also a comment. And that is an URL path pattern for this route. I'm talking about the product route, not any route, product route. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to copy this because we have this already. Let's grab this and paste this and define the second route. Now the second route here, it is what is for order. So maybe I can put here order API, and on top of this, I can put in product API. Great. All right. So here, all that you need to do here is to make the changes, isn't it? So pause the video and I'll do it. Let's see who finishes. So I have my order. Then here it is order. Great. And all that you need to do here is change this to order too. And I'm done. So the next to do here is to create our cluster, right? So our cluster should come in as another class. So we need to close this and we can return this. Now let's go to the next one. And in here we are providing our public. It should also be a static. And the same I read only. It's a list. And now this is cluster config. So you need to provide cluster config. And I will say this is get clusters. Since it is more, we can say get clusters. Okay. So here too, what are we going to do? We're going to also return a list. And are we going to say that with this new list that we're going to return, I think this should be the next line. Okay, So here I have defined the first cluster, and you know this first cluster is going for what? Product. So you make sure you pass it in product. So let's define the product cluster, and here it is new cluster config, and now with this we're going to say this is a cluster ID 2, and here we are going to say this is product cluster, right? We have product cluster. Then you know this also be a unique identifier as well for this cluster. So you cannot repeat this, you cannot use this product cluster again because it has been utilized already. Let's have a comma separated. Now the next thing that we're going to do here after providing this is destinations. You know, we can have more destinations in here because of load balancing, which we're going to be talked about later on in a later video. So here we need to provide equal to new, and now here it is taking in a dictionary of string. That is a key. And now what is the value? It is a destination config. That is a value. Okay, so in here we can provide, since it's a dictionary, we can provide a lot of lists, isn't it? Values for this. Let's provide just only one. So we're going to say this is order. Hey, did I say order? Product. So this is product, and that is a product destination. And now within this product destination, I'm going to say we're going to have, that's it. So there's a key, and the value here is a new destination config. And all that you need to do here is provide the address. So what is the address here? It is HTTP, and we have our local host port. That's the 5001 for our port, and that is all. This is very simple. Okay, so when we are done, we can terminate this beautifully. Then we need to make a duplicate of this for the other. We put comma here so we can have the next one, and define for the second cluster. And this second cluster here, it is what? Order. I believe you know this. So all that you have to do here is to do the same as we did earlier on, make the necessary changes, and boom, we're done. So instead of the product, I'm going to say this is order, and I'll change here to 2 because that is a port that we need. Yeah, we are done. Now this ID must match with what you have in the route. So it's the same. You can just cross check. It is the same. So now that we have this, what is the next thing that we're going to do? Let's go to the program settings, and now with this we're going to comment this, and we're going to use .load. You see, load from memory, isn't it? So within here, all that you need to do here is to get our basic configuration. The first one is the route. We get it. Second one is the same basic configuration. Get clusters, and that is all. Let's give it a run and check it out. All right, so they are active, they are kicking. Now let's check it out. So from the order, it has to give us the same record. Well, we have it. Let's check for our product as well. And we also have it. And there you have it. So YARP is not just another tool in your developer toolkit. It is a versatile and powerful solution for managing the complexities of microservice architecture by acting as both an API gateway and a reverse proxy. YARP simplifies client interactions, enhances security, and ensures your services can scale efficiently. So whether you are dealing with high traffic, complex routing, or stringent security requirements, YARP has got you covered. We are diving into a crucial topic that can significantly enhance the performance and efficiency of our microservices architecture. That is caching in YARP API Gateway. If you haven't seen our previous video on configuring the YARP reverse proxy in our API Gateway, then make sure to check that one out first for a solid foundation. The link can be found in the video description. So why is caching essential in microservices API gateway? Caching can drastically reduce the load on your backend services, improve response times, and enhance the overall user experience. By storing frequently accessed data closer to the client, you minimize redundant processing and network latency, making your application faster and more resilient. So in this video, we're going to explore how to implement output cache and also caching middleware in our YARP API gateway. I'll provide you with the practical steps and insight to optimize your API gateway performance. So let's get started. Now let's first look at how to implement this output cache. Output cache refers to a mechanism that stores the output of a request so that subsequent requests can be served faster without the need to recompute or refetch the same data. When a client makes a request, the API gateway processes the request and generates a response. With output caching, this response is stored in a cache. The next time a request for the same resource is received, the cache response is returned immediately, bypassing the need to contact the backend services. This significantly reduces response time and server load. So let's see how we're going to implement this. Now, in our previous video, we created our solution. We added 3 projects. So we have 2 APIs and 1 web empty project. And that is what we call, or we know it as, our API gateway. We configured that in there. And now this time around, we're going to implement our caching. Now, this output cache was introduced by Microsoft, and you don't need to install any third-party library to get this done. You can do it straight ahead. Now, what we want to do here is we need to implement this cache in all the various services. So currently, we have 2 services in here. That is the Order API and our Product API. How do we implement caching in there? Before we test for that, let's make sure we introduce delay so that when we make a request to these various endpoints, it can take about 4 seconds, 5 seconds to retrieve this content. Then we're going to implement caching and see how faster and how flexible this is going to be. Let's check it out. So first, let's go to our Product API. Now in our controller, we have this as our product that it returns when this method is being called. Now within that, to make it delay, we have to introduce task delay. So let's make this an async, and this should be a task. Aside from this, let's have an await, then our task.delay. So we're going to delay this for 4000 milliseconds, which is 4 seconds. Let's do same to the other API. So we go to our other API controller as well. And in here, let's also implement the same thing. So we make this as task. And then we can go ahead and introduce that. So await task.delay. Then let's have this as 5000 milliseconds. Okay, so we have this. Now when we run both projects, let's see how it's going to work. So they are ready, and as you can see from this, we have our Product API, we have our API. So I have a postman in here. Let's make a point to this, a call, so we can check the time that is going to take. The time is going to be found in here, so we can check here for response time. Now let's pick our other API. So first time we make a request, it's going to delay about the 5000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds, before the data has been retrieved. So we can grab this to check the actual response time. Let's paste it in here, make a call, that is get. Now let's wait and see the time that is going to take to get this response. So it is taking 5 seconds and 0.3 milliseconds, right? Let's also have a look with the product. So let's change this to product. Make a request. Okay, so API, the product is running on 5001. And this is also taking 4.12 second, right? So we have 4 seconds and 12 milliseconds. So we can get this from the API gateway, and it is running on the port of 7000. So in here we have it in the form of HTTPS. Now with the same product, if I make a call, it's going to take the same 4 point, even more than the 1.2. Let's see. So 4.20. If I try to get the other API, I try to get it, it's going to take more than 5 seconds. Great. So you can see we have 5.03 seconds. So you can see that here, anytime a client makes a request, it's going to delay for this number of seconds. Let's assume here a huge data is being processed. So you need to take time and now process this data before it returns to the client. So it means that every client or every request has to delay it for about 4 or 5 seconds, which is not best to improve the performance of our microservice. So that is the reason why we have to introduce caching. Now the caching here is going to store the request or the response from the API, and I'll save it in there. So when the next time the user tries to get the same content, then first it goes to the cache and now it returns the response. So no need for any computation again. It is done already. Good. So let's see how you can do that. Now we have 2 APIs. So let's go to the various APIs and implement this output cache. Implementing output cache here is quite simple. All that you need to do here is to go to a program.cs file for the other API. And then in here, let's add this output cache service. So you can do it at builder.services .add output cache service. And that is all. Now you need to add the pipeline. So here we're going to say app dot, and we're going to have use output cache. That is all. Now let's do same to the product API. We go to the program, and now we're going to add output cache. Let's add the service as well. And that is all. Now the next thing that you need to do here is to specify the verb, or if you want to cache the whole controller action method, or you want to make it a specific. Let's say, so currently we have only one endpoint in here. So this is what I'm going to do. We can put this output cache attribute on top. Let's grab this. We go to the product controller, and also let's put this output cache attribute here. Now that we have this set and done, all that we're going to do here is to run this application. So let's run this and check it out. So let's see, we have it. There's a reference has been added already. All right, so we can run this and check it out. So we have this running, as you can see from here. Now, in order for us to know the number of time that's going to take to return this response, let's use the postman. So from this order, the first time that we're going to make a request is going to take about 5 seconds because we're delaying actually for 5 seconds. Now the next request is going to take less than that. Have a look. So we're going to get an order from our gateway, configure using the YARP. Now let's wait and see. We are going for the order. Basically, we're delaying for 5 seconds, and it's going to add some more. So you can see we have 5.57 seconds, and that is the time. Now here, it's going to cache for about 60 seconds. So within that, let's see what to do. If I click on this again, check it out. It took about 40 milliseconds. Click on it again, 40 milliseconds. So you can see that here, the time that it takes to respond is quite simple, right? And now it's taking less time to return the content. So until 60 seconds is up, we can still have access to this data quick. Let's see. You can see it is still working, and here it is not even half a second. It is taking about just 7 few. So you can see we have it in here. Okay, now until 1 minute or 60 seconds elapse, this cache here will still be there, and all subsequent requests are going to get it. Now, since the time is up, you see now it's going to make another call, and after this call, it's going to also cache it again. So 505, click on the next call, we have about milliseconds. So this is working. Let's check our product. So make a call. It has to take 4-some seconds to finish this for the first call. Subsequent one should take less than that in milliseconds. And great, we have it. So this is also working. How do you customize this to define your custom second that you want to wait for? Maybe you don't want to delay for 6 seconds. You want to delay for maybe 24. That's 24 hours, right? Or maybe you should specify this in seconds. So you have to calculate for 24 hours, 2 seconds, and pass it in there. Maybe you want to wait or cache it for about an hour, maybe 2 hours or half a day. How do we do it? It's quite simple. You go to our output cache, and then here we can specify the duration. So you say duration. So if you need, this must be in seconds. If you need for 1 hour or 2 seconds or whatever, 2 minutes, then that is a 120, because there is 60 for 1 second. So you have 120 for about 2 minutes, right? And this can be cached in there. You can just check the number, the hour that you want to cache it for. You can write it into seconds, and now you pass it in there. And now this response is going to cache until that time. So this is quite simple. Let's maintain the default one. So that is a way of caching this. But the issue here is, when you have multiple API services, you need to go and implement this caching in all, right? Now, how do we have a single cache which will be responsible to handle all requests? That is the reason, that is why you need this caching middleware. Now, this caching middleware is going to implement this memory cache, and that is going to cache the content here as the output cache is doing in the server's memory. And all the subsequent requests are going to be cached. So we don't need to even have the output cache attribute or even the service in each API services. All that you should do here is implement that caching mechanism. That's the middleware enough. It's going to scrap this one and cache all responses from any other service that you have added to your microservices. So let's see. Now let me comment this in here. Let's go to our other API. Then let's also comment this. Let's go to the various program files. And now let's also comment this output cache middleware and add the service. So that is for the product. Let's check for the other API. Also do same to this. You want to make sure it is in default state, so there's no caching implemented. Now let's save everything. Let's run it again and test it up. So let's click on this. We have it already. So we're going to make a call again to this product API, and it should take about 4 minutes. That's 4 seconds. Yes. The next call, the same 4 seconds. You can see that. So there's no cache implemented here because we have commented that. Let's also check for the other API, and I'll make sure it returns 5 seconds. The subsequent one should also follow the same number of seconds used. So the 5.26, and let's say it should be 5 and over. So let's check. Yeah, 5.04. So it means that caching here is not implemented. Yes, we know that. So let's go implement the caching middleware. Now, on the other hand, this is a component that can be added to the request processing pipeline of your application. Talking about the caching middleware. Now, middleware components are typically used to handle cross-cutting concerns such as login, authentication, but in this case, it's going to be caching. Caching middleware intercepts incoming requests and outgoing responses. So it intercepts both the incoming requests and also the outgoing responses, allowing it to cache the responses and serve cache content for future requests. So it can be configured to handle different caching strategies by having the expiration properties, policies, and a whole lot. Okay, we're going to look at the basic ones. So basically, we will use a middleware to handle this cache system. All right, let's go and implement that as well. So the next thing that I'm going to do here is let's create a caching service to handle that. And let's add interface and at the implementation. So we're going to do that in the API gateway. So we open that one. Now let's create a folder and name it as caching. Now within this folder, let's create a class or maybe an interface. So add an item. And in that, we're going to make sure that it is interface. That is what we're going to select. And now let's give it a name. iMemory cache service could be okay for this. iMemory cache. Then once we have this, we can have access to two interfaces. The first one here is going to be set cache and also get cache. All of these are going to return. Maybe the first one, the set here, is going to return void because it returns nothing. So we need not to return anything. Okay, after I set it, and that is all. So let's have a look at this. And we're going to say this is void, then set cache. And now in here, let's provide the key that we need to retrieve it. And also let's provide a value. So let's make it as an object because you might not know the type that is going to keep. We say this is value. Then aside from that, let's specify expiration. So this, we're going to make it in the form of an integer. So you can calculate and now provide it in here. And we say this is an expiration in seconds. Okay, so that's our first interface. Let's have the second one, and that is also going to return string. And we say this is get cache. And in that, all that we need to do here is to provide the key. That is all. Let's create an implementation for this. So right click on this. Maybe I can grab the name here. That is what I'm going to use. And now within here, maybe I'm going to have a look at it. So I'm going to say public. And there is a class. Let's paste this, which is going to inherit from this iMemory cache service. In that we need to implement the interface, and we have it. Okay. So now with this that we have in here, all that we need to do again here is to inject our iMemory cache. So there's an interface, and that's the iMemory cache. We call this as memory cache. Now in this get cache, what are we going to do? We can say that let's return. Maybe here, what we're going to do here is we have to get this memory cache dot then get. And now all that we need to do is to specify the key. But this is going to return an object. When you check out, it's returning an object. This get returns an object. And here we want to return string. So let's cast this object to string. How can we achieve it? Just cast it in here to string. And that is all. So this could be on a single line using this lambda expression. And we are good to go. So we can remove this. Now let's set it. So how are you going to set this? We're also going to say that this memory cache dot set. This can also be lambda. So we're going to say this memory cache that we have in here dot set. And now with this set, what are we setting? Let's provide the key first. The value goes. So provide the value that we have in here. And at the end of the day, you have to add your datetime offset. That is the expiration time in seconds. Okay, so let's have datetime offset and dot now dot, so add seconds to this. And now let's provide the expiration in seconds parameter that we have at hand. And that is all. So we have two methods implemented, that is set and get, for our cache system. Great. So now that we have this, the next thing I'm going to do here is we need to register or create DI between the interface and the implementation class, which is this. So copy the interface, or you can even stop it. You come here and now let's add it. So within this one, what are we going to do? We're going to say that builder.services dot add. Let's make it a singleton so we can create just an instance for all. Then we pass in an interface, and then which goes with our implementation. And then we close this. So we have it registered in here. Now, what do we need to do again? We have to go ahead and use this memory cache service in our pipeline. Now, we're going to create this middleware specific to this proxy. So we're going to specify that in here. So let's map the reverse proxy middleware to the pipeline. And we have mapped this already. But in that, we need to make sure we have this configured. So let's say this proxy pipeline. Let's specify that. Then with this proxy pipeline, we need to make an extension. And so let's add a custom middleware to the proxy. And now in here, okay, we're going to say we need to have a proxy pipeline. That is this. So .use, and now this, let's specify this should be an async. We need this. That's a context. And this next keyword, that is what middleware takes, the context and the next keyword to execute the next pipeline. And this maps to, we need to also expand same. And on here, what we are saying is first, let's make sure that we retrieve the caching service from the request service provider. So let's do that. We're going to say this cache service. Then we're going to have this context dot, then we can have request service dot get required service. Then let's specify this memory cache. So here we want to get this cache service. After we have this, then what I'm going to do quickly, let's attempt to get maybe a cache response. Now this response is going to be based on the request path. So based on the request path. So the request path can be extracted from this context. As soon as a request comes in, we can get the request path, and that is URL to that endpoint which the client has issued. Okay, so once you have in here, let's try to put in the actual code to do that. So we can say this is cache response, and now this we're going to say is equal to the cache service. Since we have the cache service implemented already, cache, not a response, this should be a service. So cache service dot get cache, and now here we need to get the path. So we can get it from context dot request, then we can extract the path from here, this string, so we can get it. All right, so here with our cache response, this is what we need to do. Let's now go ahead and check. So we say that if a cache response is found, let's use it. Okay, so if cache response is found, then let's use that. So let's check, and we can use that. This is a string, so we can check string if it is not string dot null or empty, and that is our cache response. Then we want to go ahead. So here, all that we're going to do here to set the response content type to JSON. So set the response content type to JSON, and let's do so. We say content is a context. This context that we have intercepted dot response, this return to user. So dot content type, then we can say this is application slash JSON. So application, then we have our JSON configured. Aside from that, let's now go ahead and now write the cache response to the response body. The response body. So how do we do that? It's quite simple. Have your await, then context.response. And aside from that, you can have write async. So context.response.write async. And now within that, let's pass in our cache response. And that is all. So as soon as it gets the cache and it sees it is there, it's going to return it. But what if in case it isn't? That is where we need to implement this else. So else, what are you going to do? Let's set the response, or let's store the original response body stream. Okay. So we have to extract the response body from the context. So let's say we need to store this. So we're gonna say that there's a var, and we're gonna have there's the original response body stream. And now with this, we're going to say this equal to this context that's coming in dot response dot body. So we have this body at hand. What are we going to do again? We're going to create a new memory stream to temporarily hold the response. So let's do that. Let me fix this original. So in here, let's create a new memory stream to temporarily hold it. Yeah, so we're going to hold the response. So here we're going to be using this keyword. Then let's have our var response body. Then it's equal to new memory stream. Now with this memory stream, this using here is going to kill it as soon as it is done. So let's go and replace the response body stream with the memory stream. So replace the response body stream with the memory stream. And in that, this is what we need to do. We're going to say that this context dot response that we have in here dot body, then we're going to assign it to this response body that we have. And after we're having this, we need to call the next middleware in the pipeline. So we hold on, so call the next middleware in the pipeline. So we say await, then next. Okay. Now after it has gone, and now it has come back as a response, what do we need to do? So let me fix this. Let's reset the memory stream position to the beginning. So here let's do context. So this is a context dot response, then dot body, context dot response. Now with dot body, so we can have seek from this. And now with this seek, we set it to the beginning in here, and I say seek origin dot begin. So we do that. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to read the response body as a string, because here it is coming in the form of object, so we need to convert it to a string so we can return. We can pass it to the JSON context and I return it. Okay, so let's have our response. And we say response body text. We say this equal to await the new stream reader. So since we have it in the stream, we can read it in there. So we say stream reader. and let's specify our context.response body, context.response.body. Then we can have dot read to end async. So let's read everything that we have in there. And after that, we want to create a cache key for this, so we can cache the response before I return it. So create a cache key. Then we're going to say that let's say this is our cache key. Now the cache key, what you need to do here is to get it from the request path, and we can get it from this context.request. So we can have it from the request, not response. Request dot, then we can have the path. Now with this, we need to convert to a string so we can have it. Okay, then let's store it. So we can have this cache service dot, and now we have a method known as set cache as an interface in it. And now with this, it needs a cache key, so provide it. It needs a value that is an object, and now here we have it as response body test already, because it's a test that we've read and we have it at hand. Then let's set our expiration time to maybe 60 seconds, which will be in seconds at 60. Then that is all. All right, so once you're done, all that you're going to do here is let's copy the content of the memory stream to the original response body stream. So how do we do that? We're going to have an await, then we're going to have a response body dot copy to async. We use copy to async, and I'll specify the original response body stream, and that is all. So this is all that we need to do to make sure that our cache will be working. Okay, so now that we're having this, what we need to do again, we can just put a breakpoint. So this point here is going to work when cache exists. If it isn't, then this point is going to get to work. So let's see, I'm going to put a breakpoint here. Maybe the if, that is going to return, but else it means the cache here is not found. Now let's check this out. So let's give this, before we do that, this must be the debugging mode because we cannot use this. So let's stop. Let's make sure it runs. It stops it. Then we're going to configure it again and start in the debugging mode so we can check this point that we have configured in here. So let's click on this start. Then let's go to configure startup project. And in here, let's make sure we choose multiple startup project. Let's set each to start. Apply this, and let's give this a run. All right, so we're having an issue here because I think we have done something wrong. Yes, we haven't added the memory cache. Since we're using that, we have to add it first. So let's say there's a builder.services .add memory cache. So let's save this. Let's try again. So this is ready. As you can see from here, we have three browser opened, and we have a product, we have the order, and lastly we have our gateway, right? So let's make sure we have this also working. Now let's try it. So we have this order. We're going to try this again, and initially it's going to take about 5 seconds to handle that. So let's say 5 point something seconds. The next line is going to get hit. Now let's try it and see. So we click on that. All right, so we say that we have an error saying no service type for this has been registered. Let's cross check here, and we are getting the service required. We are getting this repo service, but we have injected this, so we need to use this interface. That's what we need to use. So let's make sure we have this instead. Okay, let's try this again. So let's have, now they are all active. Let's check it up again. Okay, so it's taking about 5 seconds to handle that. But we are not getting any response, although it worked, but we are not returning any response in here. So let's cross check it. Now in here, we start. Okay, so let's grab this. And after we're done here, we need to also set it. So maybe we can have it done here. After reading, let's reset. Okay, so we reset, we read. After that, it has to come back to the default state. And I believe this should work now. So let's uncomment this. All right, now let's give it a try. Okay, so as you can see from here, they are opened and we can now test it. So from our other API, we're going to test from our gateway, and now let's make sure it's wait for about 5 seconds. All right, so yeah, we have it. Now it takes 5.41 seconds. If I click on it again, let's see whether the response caching is working. Okay, so it isn't because you have an issue. Unable to cache this object stream to this string. Let's set this response body text. We don't want to cache the response body, but rather the text. That's going to be in a string form. So in here, let's copy this response body text. And instead of this, we paste this here. I believe this solves it now. And let's give it a try. So let's save it. Now let's run this again. So let's try by getting orders again. So yeah, it is taking 5.61 seconds. Now click on it again, and now we should have 178 milliseconds. Yep. So you can see the caching is working, and the time that it takes to return this data is very fast. So you can see that it's not as much as getting it initially. So it tells you that this caching is working. So you've seen how we can implement caching to our microservices using the output cache and also using this caching middleware in a YARP API gateway. So by leveraging output cache and caching middleware, you can ensure that your microservices architecture, it is not only scalable, but it is also incredibly efficient. We are diving into 2 powerful features of YARP API gateway that can significantly enhance the performance and flexibility of our microservices. They are load balancing and request and response transformation. Let's first talk about load balancing. Why do we actually need it? Imagine your application is growing and the number of users is increasing rapidly. With a single instance of your service, you might face performance bottlenecks leading to slow response time or even downtime. That is where load balancing comes into play. Load balancing distributes incoming requests across multiple instances of your service, ensuring no single instance is overwhelmed. This not only improves the performance and reliability of your application, but it also provides fault tolerance. For example, if one instance goes down, the load balancer can redirect traffic to other healthy instances, keeping your application running smoothly. Let's relate this to an e-commerce microsystem. Let's say you are running an e-commerce platform with high traffic during sales event. By implementing load balancing, you can distribute the traffic evenly across multiple instances of your product service, ensuring a seamless shopping experience for your users. So let's see how we can integrate this load balancer in our API gateway. So I have created a project already and created a blank solution under 3 projects, API gateway for 1. That is where we are integrating our YARP Reverse Proxy. And also we have our other API and our product API. These services are doing not much. All that they are doing is to return one endpoint in their controllers. So you can see from this order, it's returning an order. Just a hard-coded order here in the form of a list. And when you go to the API, it also returns a list of products. That is what we've done so far. And when you go to our API gateway, we installed our package. That is a YARP .reverse proxy. Aside from that, we made a configuration, and in the configuration, we use a class, or you can use the configuration file in the app settings. You can also use that. So let's see how we can integrate this load balancer. With the help of YARP Reverse Proxy, configuring load balancing is quite easy, very easy, and you can do it easily. See, now from our configuration that we created, we want to put them in here. So you can see that in the configuration, when you go to the route, we have this route in the form of a list, and that tells you what each route here is mapped to in the clusters. So you can see each is having a unique cluster ID. So this is a product cluster, and that is a cluster ID for this. So it means we have to map it in there, and that is exactly what we are doing here. So you can see we have a product cluster, and it gives you the destination. Now, in order to create or add a load balancer, this is just an instance of your application. Let's say this is an API. So what if in case I want to have multiple instances? Yes, I can do it. That is the reason why this here is a dictionary. So it can handle a lot of lists in there. So you can see that from here, when we check, we have our product API, which is running on port of 5001. We have other cluster, that's an other API, which is running on the port of 5002. Now, when we check from this service, that is API gateway, when you check from the line settings, this also running on, that's an HTTPS of 7000, that's 7000. So it means we can create an instance of each service that we want to do. Let's go back again to our basic configuration. Now, in order to add this load balancer, let's assume you want to increase the instances of our product. So in that, all that we're going to do here is you go to the cluster, and that is where we have to add another configuration for that. So here, let's make two other instances. So let's make duplicate of this. And since we have 501 for product, 502 is for order, we need to make this as 503 and now 504. So here we are creating an extra 2 instances. Okay. Now here, after doing this, all that you're going to do again is to add or integrate this load balancer. So then have your load balancer policy. And now here this equal to, you're going to have this load balancer policies. Then let's use round robin. So we have our policy and we are using this. So round robin is a built-in policy. There are a lot of built-in policies in there. So when you put in dots, you're going to have all these policies. Default one is a power of 2 choices. Now with each policy, what does each do? Now when we pick this first alphabetical, so you can see we have this first alphabetical. What it does here is select the alphabetically first available destination without considering load. So it's going to use the alphabet in order to get it selected. Whether it is loaded or not, it's going to use it. We don't want to use that. Aside from that, you can also go in for random. And now with this random here, you're going to pick it randomly and assign the request to it. Okay. But in here, you want to use this round robin. Round robin here is select destination by cycling through them in order. So they're in order, and I'm going to cycle through them, and that is where you're going to pick this destination. Okay. So we have also a list request that you can select. That is, select the destination with the least assigned request. So let's say we have 5 requests in there. Now 4 of them have gone to one instance. Then the other one coming in will go to the one with no request received. So that is the least request. So you can choose any of them based on what you want to use it for. But for now, let's maintain this round robin. Okay. So that is all we need to do in here. The next thing to do here is we need to run our instance of this application in 3 different console, right? So let's save this. And actually I have my PowerShell or terminal. Let me put it up. And in here, we're going to run this through this port. Okay, so before that, that is a terminal. And let's navigate. So I have this. Navigate to this project root. So that is I have in project. And in here, whilst I'm in this project, so when I go to, that is a project name. So I can grab this project name, then go back. And in here, if I type in ls, I'm going to see our project. So I want to run the product API, because when you check here, we want to load balance the product API. So let me grab this product API. And okay, so that is cd product API. So you can see from here, I am into the root of this product. Now, all that I'm going to do here is I'm going to use .NET run, then --urls. And in here, I'm going to specify my URL that I want to build with, I want to run with. So that is HTTP, and I have a local host. Now, this local host, the first port here, it is a 5001. So 5001. And that is what I need. So I can run this instance in here. Now it's first going to build this, and after building this project, it's going to make that run. When we are done, we're also going to run this another instance. So we need 3 instances here to make sure application is running in 3 separate instances. Yeah, so you can see that this app is running. Let's also run, because we need to have 3 instances. Now the next one here is a 503 and 504. So let's also have another 2 terminals to handle that. Okay, so within in here, let's also run the same thing. And this will run on HTTPS, localhost. And now the port here, it is 5003. So we're running on this. We can also run on another instance. So we have it in the 5004. And we can have .NET run, then HTTP, we have it localhost, then the port here is 5004. So it means this is not running. We have to do this again. Let's try this. Okay, so let's do it again. And yeah, so this is running also. And this also should run. Yeah, the same. Okay, and let's try this. And it's also running. So we are having 5001. We have 5003. We have 5004. You see? Now let's put our browser and let's see how we can get access to this. So we have our local host. Then it is 5001/swagger. When you access this, you must have access to our product API. Let's also copy this, change this to 5003, and we must also have access to the same product API. Then let's have 5004. So with this, we are scaling our app manually, right? So we have 5004. So we have 3 instances here. Now with these instances, the load balancer is going to now balance the load or the request to each of these. Now, in order for us to test this out, let's make sure we have our postman active. So we can make a call. If you have any other Insomnia or any other software that you can use to test it, it's possible. You can do it. Now we have to make sure that our gateway is running. So let's create another instance in here. And now let's make sure our API gateway is also on the move. So let me go in there and grab this. So ls gives you API gateway. So you can see we are in. And let's also have .NET run. And now this is running on the port of HTTPS. And that is a local host. And remember the port 7000. So let's run this. So we have an issue in here. Build failed. We have to fix it. Let's check and see where we need to do that. Alright, so I'm sure that was a problem. I believe you've configured yours, isn't it? Yeah, so let's try again. We're just going to build it and run it on the port that we specified with the protocol of HTTPS. Whoa, still? Okay, so let's build our API gateway. Alright, so built, and let's try it. So let's use .NET build. Okay, so this is built. There's no warning, no error. Now let's run this. Wow, and now this is also running. So we can just grab this. Let's go to our browser. And then here for our API gateway, we know that this HTTPS, the local host. And this is running on the port of 7000. So when this runs, we go see nothing. Yes, but it's running because we have the port in here. That is a 7000, and that is exactly what we haven't. So this is running. Now let's use our postman to check this out. Okay. Now before we check out, we have to make sure our console is even here because that is what you're going to see. Which port is the load is balancing to. So let me put this one here. Then this should also, okay, let's make it here. Now we're going for product. So the first time we're going to make a request to product. Click on send. And now let's make sure, let's check here. It is picking up to what? 5001. So this is the first port. Now this port here is going to return the content. So let's wait and see. It's going to delay for 4 seconds. Since we introduced caching, we introduced delay. The next request is going to cache it. We did this in the previous video. So let's see. Okay, so we have the content in here. Now the next call that's going to make, let's see. So it took 4.78. Now the next call, let's see, you can see cache is working. So it did not even make a call to this. But unless the time period has expired. So in order for us to test it well and see what's actually doing, let's go back to our settings and let's deactivate this caching. So let's go to our product controller, and in here we want to Let's clear the delay because it is a product control API. So let's save that. Aside from that, let's go and stop the caching. So we can do that from our program. That is our API gateway. Then in there, here we can just copy this. Let's map this. And let's comment this. Okay. So now that we are done here, it means we have to go and stop and restart all, even the product, because we've done new thing. So let's stop. Let's stop. Let's stop. And I'll stop this as well. Now let's run this again. So run this. 5001 is going to build this, and I get it run. Let's wait. Yeah, so this is running. And now let's also run this. Okay, so this is not. Let's stop this first. And let's make sure, okay, this is running. Now let's go and run this. This also running, and let's go back and run first one. This is also running. Last we're going to run our the API. So let's run this with the port of 700. Yes, so this is now active. Now let's make sure our API gateway console is here, and let me open it wide. Then let's put our postman. We're going to make a call to this. Check it out. Now the first call is going to get hit, sent to 5001. I hope you've seen that. Let's make the next call. And now here it is 5001 again. Let's try this again. The same 5001. So we are still getting 5001. It means it is making this request to the first service, but not the other ones. Why? Let's go and check whether we using the configuration. So let's go to the program. Yeah, that is this one. And you can see from here, we are using the section, and we haven't added the configuration as a load balancer into this section. So let's comment this, and now let's use the class file that we created. That is where we are having this basic configuration, and that is where this load balancing resides. So let's save this. And again, we go to the PowerShell for our API gateway. Now let's stop this. Can clear screen. And now let's run this again. So we are having an issue here. And what is the issue? It is saying that an item with the same key has already been added. Let's go to line 40 of our basic configuration. So line 40 in here, basic configuration, and line 40, that is this. Okay, so we're going to return a cluster config. And here we have a destination with multiple instances. Now, yeah, so this one should also have a unique. So let's make it destination 2, destination 3. Great. Let's make sure we get no errors again. So let's run this. Yeah, so this is running. Now let's go up. Let's go to, and in here, let's try to make a request. So let's first see where the request will be sent to. Let me open this more. Okay, so I click on this. It's going to make a call to the 5003. Have you seen that? Now let's see another call. It is getting to 5001. Great. Another call, 5004. So you can see that we've shared 3 requests shared among these 3 instances. Now the next request, let's see which one, 5003. It's going to start again. Then we have 5001, 5004, 5003, 5001, exactly 5004. So you can see that it is circling the request. So start from the 5003 up to 5004, then it starts again. So here it is evenly sharing this request, and it does that to stop overwhelming one request or one service with multiple requests. So you can see this is the simplest way of integrating load balancing in your YARP Reverse Proxy or your YARP API. Okay, so let's see, that is how to do that. Now let's talk about request and a response transformation. So why do we need request and a response transformation? Now, in microservices architecture, different services often communicate with each other. However, they might have different data format or require specific headers. That is where request and response transformation becomes essential. Request and response transformation allows you to modify the incoming request and outgoing responses. So you can add or remove header. You can even change the body or the request body, or even transform the response format. This flexibility enables seamless communication between services, even if they have different requirements. Just consider this. Where you have a front-end application sends requests in the JSON format, but one of your backend services requires XML. In this case, how can you do it? With request transformation, you can convert the JSON request to XML before forwarding it to the backend service. And this can be done in the request and a response transformation. Let's see how we can integrate this also in a YARP API gateway. So let's close this one because we are done. Let's close all. Okay. Now the next thing to do here is, we want to create this in a class, a service class, so we can call that or inject it in the API configuration. Okay. So we don't want to scatter this file with a lot of code. So let's go and create a separate class to handle that. In an API gateway, maybe we can add maybe a folder. I'm sure. Yes, a folder we need. Then with this folder, why I name it folder? I wanted to name it at services, but it came as folder. Right click on this. Let's add a class. And with this class, give it a name, any name at all. But well, since it's going to be a request and response transformation, I can do that and add a service to it. So I'm going to say request and transformation. Well, request and response transformation service. Too long, never mind. This is going to be a service class, so it should be a static. Then in that, let's have our public static, and it's going to return iService collection. So let's say this is request and response transformation service. Now I'm going to add this service. Okay. Now this needs a parameter, and that's going to be iService collection. So it has been popped up, and that is all. This is what we need. So no problem. We're going to click on that. Now at the end, we need to return the service. Okay. Now what do you need to do? We're going to be adding. So we're going to say services.add reverse proxy, because we have it already installed, so we can also get it from here. Now with this reverse proxy, the next thing to do here is we want to get not even add load from memory, and in here maybe we still need let's use the section. So maybe we want to, let's use load from config, and now that is a builder.services. But when you do that, it means we need to use iConfiguration. Then we say this is config. So in here we are saying that config.get section. And now with this get section, what is the section name? That is an API gateway. Okay, when you go to your solution, you go to your app settings. The name here is an API gateway, and that is exactly what we need to grab. Okay, so let's go to our service, and it is the same. Good. So now that we have this set, the next thing that we're going to do here is we can add the transformation. So you say add, we have transforms. So add this transforms, and now let's have an option builder in it as maybe builder. Then we're going to open this wide. So here, this transforms, you can add requests and a response transform. Okay, let me close it before it becomes too late for me. Okay, so here we're going to say that this is going to the API controller. So there is a request. So this is request. And on this request, it is going to the API controllers. So we're going to say that this builder dot add, you can see that. So we can have request transforms. So we have add request transforms, and in that let's have as transformed context. Transform context, and within it, that is where we're going to do our magic. So what do you want to do? Let's say add or modify the request header. So here we're going to add or modify the request header. The request that is coming in, we want to modify the header. So we can say that transform context.http context.request, and we have that. So we can say .headers, and on this headers, let's add something in here. We can say that this is X, maybe a modifier. Okay, and we say this is a header. So there is a key that we are assigning, and now what is the value? We're going to say that this is maybe Netcode-Hub. So here we have been able to modify the header, and aside from that, we can also rewrite the request path. So we can also rewrite, if you want to change the path, the request path. So the request path here, it is actually going to hit the API endpoint. Let's say you want to register, it should be an API/register. And here we can also change it. So maybe we want to register, but at the end of the day, we want to sign up or we want to log in. You see? So we can change the path. And now this, since it is now going to enter the controller, as soon as you rewrite the path, when it gets to the controller, it's going to the path which has been rewrite here, not the one the client sent. So it's very powerful. So we can say the same transform context.http context.request, not the response.request. And now with this request, we can say .add, so request. Then we can have headers, you see? So headers dot add, and now in here we're going to have X, that is a forwarded path. So forwarded should be in code like this. So X dash, you have forwarded path. And now with this, we can have a look. We can say that maybe this is a new path that you want to pass it on. You see? Then we can terminate this. So one beautiful thing about this reverse proxy here is it exposes its own proxy request. So instead of using this HTTP context from here, we can get this proxy request, so we can add this header to it. So we can say this is proxy request, and in that we can get this header straight ahead or straight away from that. Okay, now aside from that, we can also maybe we can launch, or we can log, we can do login. So let's try that. So you see, you can manipulate this. So let's say log. You can log request details. This will be optional. You can do that. So how do we do it? Let's write something. So we're going to say that this is our request that we're going to get, and we can have transform context dot http context then dot request. So we have this request. Now we can console the console.write line, and now in here we can specify request path. So let's say this is our request path, and in here we're going to make sure we have this request that we have stored. We can get path from here. This is quite simple. Let's terminate this, and at the end we need to return value tags dot complete. Okay, so that is a way. So you can do a lot of stuff in here. In between, you can do some magic in here to modify the request before it gets to the controller or the API. Now, after it gets to the API and I return to the user, let's catch it up in the way and I'll modify the header before we push it up to the client. Okay, and in that we can also do same from here. So you can see we are adding. Now here, this is, let's give it a comment. So this is going to the user, or this is going to the client. Okay, now with this, what are we going to do here? Let's also modify the response header. So we're gonna say, so the same builder dot add response transform. We can also get response transforms in here. So add response transform, and now let's have transform context. We also close this, and now at the end let's return value tags dot completed task. Okay, then in here we need to add maybe a header. So let's give a slight comment. So add or modify the response header as well. And in order to modify that, we can have this transform context that we have in here. Then we can say that .http context as we did. Instead of going for request, now we're going for response. You see? So response, and now with this we can also get headers from that. So .headers, and now this header, let's add maybe as this a custom response header. And now what is the value that you want to assign to? This is a custom header included. Okay, now aside from that, we can also log something. So we can also log response detail. And we're going to say console.write line, and maybe response has been modified. We can do anything. You can pass in anything that you want to do. So has been modified. Okay. All right. So now response is modified. I think so. Okay. So that is all we need to do. So we can actually intercept it. We can configure or modify the header, the request, and also the response. So how do we check this? Maybe you can create a simple middleware handler to handle this, or so we can check. So maybe in here, the same service, let's create another class. Now this class, I'm going to say this is checker or interceptor. Well, so interceptor. Now this interceptor here, what is it going to do? It's just a middleware. So we have a request delegate. And now this is nest. So let's have public is an async, a task, and it is known as invoke async. Now this takes in HTTP context. We say this is context. And now in here, we're going to have await nest dot context. Okay, so this is going to be, this is the incoming, and this is going to be the outgoing. So this is the actual console. This is going to call the next middleware. So as soon as it gets here, it means it's now returned to the user. We have incoming and outgoing. Now let's see. So how do we use this? Let's copy this. We go to our request service, and now down here, this is our iService. Let's have public static. Then here's going to return an application builder. We say this is use RR service. Then here this takes in application builder. So this is app. And at the end, we want to return app. Then we have app.use. We have app.use middleware. And now let's specify the interceptor middleware that we created. Okay. So in order to use this or make this work, we need to grab this. We go to our program file in here. Let's comment this. And then all that you need to do here is to include builder.services.add. We have our request and response transformation service, which takes in configuration. So we say builder.configuration, and that is all. When you come to the middleware, we're going to say that app.use RRS, and that is all. You see? So let's have a look and see whether our request and response was actually modified. So we have an API. Let's make sure we configure our startup project. So multiple projects. Now start this and starts. Let's start all together. Okay, so now this is ready. And let's try this and see. So let me bring my Postman. Now when I click on make request, yes, it is hit. Now it is going to the controller, and that is it. So here we have a return response. Now let's configure it out and see whether our request and our response has been modified. So in the context, from here, we can extract our request and our response. Let's first check the request. For my request, we go to the headers, and I can see from here we're having this X modifier header, and that's a Netcode-Hub. So you can see we have the request being added in the request header, getting to the controller. So in the various controllers, we can extract this header key from it. Aside from that, let's also check it again. Let's go to our response. And from our response, let's go to headers. And we see from headers too, we have this header also added. And that is a custom header included. So in both ways, we've been able to modify the request and the response. But I think one issue is we did not see the path change, right? So let's go to our request. And by all means, we can still use the path which has the get and now set accessed. So we can go in there and rewrite that. And we can do that from this transform context dot http context dot request dot path. Now this path has get and set accessors. So you see, we can set it. You see this equal to new path. Let's save this and let's rerun this again. Check it out. Okay, so let's make sure they are in there. Now let's go and make another request. Click on send. This gets hit. Now continue on. And now in here, let's go and check if the path has been changed. So from our request, yeah, so you can see from here, the path has been changed to new path. So you can see we requested product API / product, but the path has been changed here using this transformation. So that is a way of transforming the header and also the request in Reverse Proxy, using that in our API gateway. So by integrating load balancing and request and response transformation in your YARP API gateway, you can enhance the scalability, reliability, and also the flexibility of your microservices architecture. These features help ensure that your application can handle increased traffic and facilitate seamless communication between services with different requirements. We are going to explore two crucial aspects of modern API gateways. They are rate limiting and authentication in the YARP API gateway that we have started. Now, you might be wondering, why do we need rate limiting and authentication? Let's break it down with some real-world scenarios. Let's first talk about rate limiting. Imagine you have a popular e-commerce platform. During a flash sale, thousands of users might try to purchase the same product simultaneously. Without rate limiting, your servers could get overwhelmed, leading to slowdowns or even crashes. Rate limiting helps you control the flow of traffic, ensuring that your services remain responsive and available to everyone. It prevents any single user from monopolizing your resources, thereby providing a smoother experience for all users. How do you integrate this in our API gateway using the YARP Reverse Proxy? Let's see how we can do that. We created a solution already, and that is our fourth video. So if you haven't checked the 3 videos out, I have the links available in this video description. In these 3 videos, we created a solution. We added 3 projects, and the concentration here is much on the API gateway. That is where we installed our YARP Reverse Proxy app. What is a package? And in here, we have configured it. We've integrated request and response transformation, load balancing, and more, caching as well. So you can check the video description to watch these videos to get more insight on how to implement these features. Okay, implementing rate limiting in Reverse Proxy is very simple. That is a YARP. All that you need to do here is open a configuration and now give it a line of code, put a service in the program file, and that is all. Let's see how we can achieve this. So in our API gateway, you can see we have a configuration folder, and that is where we have a basic configuration file in there for this YARP Reverse Proxy. So on top here, all that you're going to do here is you're going to add rate limiter policy. So we're going to have our rate limiter policy. And now in that, let's say this is our rate limiter policy. Let's also have the same name for that. So this is rate limiter policy. Let's grab this. And that is for a product route. You want to do same to the other route. So you can put it also in there. That is all. Now the next thing to do here is go to the program file. And let's add the rate limiter service. Okay, so here let's have our rate limiter service in here. So we're going to say that is builder.services .add, we're going to have rate limiter, and in there let's specify options to this, and we say that this options.add so let's add fixed window limiter, and in here we want to give it a name. We make sure the name is the same as what we have specified for this. So you can specify a rate limiter for this. You can also specify the same rate limiter for this. So you can see that we can decide not to use one configuration, one service for all. You can create a configuration for each of the routes that you have in here. But for this, let's maintain one for all. So we copy that and let's put this here. If you have made a video on explaining how we can use this, how you can configure the types of rate limiter. You know, if I click on this options, we have concurrency limiter, we have add fixed window limiter, we have sliding limiter, and we have token bucket. I've made a video on explaining each how we can do that. So I'll put the link in this video description. If you haven't watched that, you can watch that video to get more insight on that. Okay. But with this, we're going to give a fixed amount of time which is going to be used for execution of the incoming request, and until that time exhausted, we cannot, or the service cannot be opened for another incoming request. That's how we say it's a fixed. Okay, so we have this set. The next thing that we're going to do here is we need to specify an option to this, and it should come in here. So let's say there's an option again. Now with this option, we need to add, so we have permit limit. So how many requests do you want to permit it? Let's say we have, I want to permit maybe one request for testing purpose. Okay, then we're going to have this up.window. So the time that I should take to process this number of requests, and we're going to say there's a time span that from seconds. So you want to take about 20 seconds to process one request. This is very bad. Yeah, but for this purpose, we want to test and see whether this is going to work. That's the reason why we are integrating this. Okay. And aside from this, what else can we do again? Do we want to have a queue? Maybe you know that here we are having 20 seconds to process one request, which is very, very bad. Okay. But in this case, when the subsequent requests come in within that 20 seconds, what should the system do? So yeah, we're going to say that, okay, fine. So the external requests that come in, make sure you queue them. Do you want to queue them or not? If you want to queue them, then you can go ahead and now add the queuing. How do we add it? It's quite simple. It is the same thing like we have a queue limit. You see we have queue limit. So the number of queues that you want to create, you want to put them, the number of requests that you want to align them in a queue. You can specify this in here. And also you can specify when the 20 minutes is done and it is time to process the next request. It has to go to the queue and now get the request then process. How do you want to arrange the request in the queue? So let's see, and that's why we have this we have queue processing order, and then here you can set it to older first or newest first. So the oldest, meaning the first request that came in, which will be queued as 91, has to be processed after the 20 minutes has expired. Okay, so that's what it's going to do. But with this, we're not going to integrate this, so we can comment this. So to test and see whether our system or this is working. Now, in case there's an issue, in case the limit here also exceeds, or in case maybe there's more requests aside from one, then we want to reject it with a status code. So in here we can say reject status code, and that is 429, which is too many requests. Or we can say that status code in here dot too many requests, and that is 429. We have it here, too many requests 429. So we can also assign the status code in here. So as soon as you pass in more than one request, it's going to bring out the status code for you, telling you that you are overwhelming the system with too many requests. Okay, now that we are done, we need to use the pipeline. So come here, and on top of this, we're going to say app.use rate limiter, and that is all. So now that we are done with this, let's go ahead, give it a run and check it out. Alright, so it is ready. Let's make sure our postman is also ready in here. I have it open already. Alright, so you can see from here we are having our port, that is our reverse proxy, or our API gateway, that is a 7000. We have two APIs or two services, and in there we want to tackle the other API. So if I click on this, the first request is 1, so it's going to get processed, but the second request, which happened within the same 20 seconds, would have to be rejected. And we must see a status code of 429. That is too many requests. Let's hit it and check it out. So there's an other request. Oh, so here say method not allowed. Yeah, because here it is post, we should be get. Now click on it again, and we should see the list of audits. Well, we have it. Now within this 20 seconds, let's hit on it again and now check it out. We are still getting it. Do you know the reason why? Let's check and see. Alright, let's try the product API too and check it out. So here we have our product, the next request. Alright, so here it seems like we have our caching in place, so it is skipping it. Let's go and make sure we have that set to off. We have this caching, so maybe we can. Okay. Okay, but when you come here, you see we've commented the caching already, I think from the previous video. So that is not in place. Let's find out. Let's go to this service and see whether we are consuming the configuration class that we created or consuming the app settings configuration file. So we go to our request and our response. That is where can you find this? Service response. So that is this one, to our services. Okay, so you can see from here we are taking in the configuration, and we haven't done that in the configuration. So maybe we can go ahead and undo it in there. So in order to do that, we go to our app settings, and that is where we have our route. So this route, we have a product route, and in there we can specify the rate limiter option in here. So this is what we need to write. Let's add rate limiter option. So rate limiter, and this should be policy. So with this policy, what is the name of the policy? It is the same name as the key. So provide it in there. And now let's grab the same thing. We go to our other, and let's put it in here. Okay, let's give this run again and check it out. Okay, so that is ready again. Give it another try. So we have the record again. You see we have too many requests. So until that 20 minutes is over, we cannot have another request. So we can keep clicking, sending, and we're going to keep rejecting. Let's see for the other. So if I click on send, let's check this out. The first request is successful. Subsequent ones, too many requests. Now let's go back and check if the product is working. It's 20 seconds over. So we have our product. Then click on send. Now you can see we have it. Go to other. Click on send. It's still not over yet. So click on send again. And now we have it. So you can see that we have been able to integrate this rate limiting option into our reverse proxy. That is our YARP reverse proxy or API gateway. So now we are done with this. Let's also talk about authentication. Why do we need authentication in our API or API gateway? Authentication is like the bouncer at a club, ensuring only authorized individuals get in. In the context of microservices, it ensures that only valid users can access your services. For instance, if you are running a banking application, you don't want unauthorized users accessing sensitive financial data. Implementing robust authentication mechanism helps protect user data and maintain the integrity of your services. So let's also see how we can do that. So let's stop this from running. And let's go to our program. So let's install some packages first. So on the API gateway, you want to handle the authentication in the API gateway. So right click on dependencies and let's go to manage NuGet packages. In there, we're going to install SQLite. That's what we're going to be using as a database. And also we need efcore.tools as well. So we have tools. So let's install this Microsoft.entity-framework-call.tools. Let's also install our SQLite. So that is this. Let's also get this installed. Okay. So we have these two packages installed on our API gateway. Okay, so let's go to our API gateway. Let's create DB context for this. We're going to be using an identity manager. So let's have our data folder. Let's create a DB context. So this is going to be a class, and this is going to be identity DB context. So identity DB context. Let's create this. This class should inherit from identity DB context. So our line this should be, let's rename this to app identity DB context. Then this should come from, so let's rename this. Okay, now this class should inherit from, then we have identity user. So we need to install some package. Let's install this package. We need to also install a package for, let's see, identity user. And this should be using ASP.NET Core identity. Okay, now let's create a constructor for this. Now let's pass in the option. Okay, so we are done. We need not to create any table. It's going to be created for us automatically. So you go back to our configuration. That's a program file. And in here, let's start adding what we need to add. Okay, so here let's add database connection. So you're going to say this is builder.services.add db context, pass in identity db context. And here we need to use an option. This option maps to, we're going to use SQLite. And with this, let's specify a database connection. And let's use demo db.db. So this is going to be a database. Let's close this. The next thing that we're going to do here is let's add identity. Now identity here, we're going to have builder.services.add identity, and then let's specify our identity user. And also we're going to be using row, so let's specify our identity row. Aside from that, we're going to add entity framework store, and in here we need our DB context in there. Then last one, let's add rows, and this row we need identity row. Okay, so now we are done with this. Let's also go ahead and add our authentication. Now this authentication is actually JWT. So we're going to say that here we're going to have first our constant, and it's a string. We're going to have our default scheme, and the default scheme is going to be JWT bearer. So with this bearer, we're going to have the authentication scheme JWT bearer default. Then let's see. Okay, so we need to install Microsoft.ASP.NET Core Authentication.JWT bearer. Let's find the latest and get this installed. So now this is done, we can get default authentication scheme from this. So that is what we have in here. Now we're going to do builder.services.add authentication. And now with this, let's make sure we expose this. Then in here, we're going to say that the default scheme is JWT bearer default authentication. And aside from that, we can have x.default challenge scheme, and that is same JWT bearer default authentication scheme. The next thing that we're going to do here is we need to add, so let me close this line. So add JWT bearer. Let's specify the scheme that we created. So that's the default scheme, or we took. So we extracted this scheme from the identity scheme, right? Authentication scheme, and that's what we're using in here. So from this, let's specify an option to that. And now with this option, let's make sure we get our key from our configuration. Then, so let's encode the key. So encoding.utf8.getByte. Then with this getByte, we need our builder.configuration.getSection. And this section, we need authentication. That's going to be our section. I want to grab the key as a key. I want to grab its value. So this could be a value. Then aside from having this, the next thing we need to do here is to get our issuer and the audience. So issuer is same. So we can have builder.configuration.get section. And the same authentication slash, you have an issuer. You want to grab the value as well. Then we need to do same to get the audience. So let's say we have our audience. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is, once we have this, let's specify our options.required HTTP metadata. Let's set this to false. Let's also have an options.save token. Let's set this to true. Let's have an options.token validation parameters equal to new. Then we have our token and parameters, and in that we need to validate issuer. Let's make this possible. Start from this, let's validate audience, make this possible as well. Then we're going to make sure we disable this validate lifetime, because I don't have any refresh token yet. So let's set this to false. And the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to provide this valid issuer. So valid issuer, and that is an issuer we have created or retrieved. Then we have valid audience, and that is what we have also retrieved. So you pass it in there. Then we have issuer signing key. Now this issuer signing key, let's get a symmetrical key of this. So we're going to say new symmetrical. Then we pass in the key that we have retrieved. So that is the key that we have retrieved. And we are done. So after adding this authentication, the next thing that we're going to do here is let's add policy. So here we're going to be using a policy. Okay. So let's say add authorization policy. Now with this policy, we're going to have builder.services.add authorization builder. Then with this builder, we're going to add policy. Now with this policy, let's say this is admin policy. Now this admin policy, we also want to specify this, and we're saying this admin policy should, okay, let's make it one here. So we're going to say that this policy that we have, and let this should be policy. So this policy dot, then we want to make sure we required an authenticated user. You must be authenticated. Aside from that, required rows. So you want to have maybe one row of admin. Then that is all. Okay. So let's also make another one. So dot add policy, and let's say this is user policy. Let's also specify this, and we are saying that this policy should also require same authenticated user and dot required row as well. So we have rows, and now with this row, we're saying you must be a user row before you can access this. And we also have this put in place. So the next thing that we're going to do is let's add our authentication. Then let's have our authorization as well. Okay, so now since we are going to expose an endpoint for registration and for login, okay, so we can get access to a token, we need to integrate controllers here. So maybe let's go ahead and map controllers. So you can say that this app.map controllers. So we map controllers in here. Okay, I think this should be before. Okay, then let's add a controller service. So we're going to say that builder.services. So .add controllers, and that is all. So let's go to our solution. Now in here, let's right click on the API gateway. Let's add folder. Let's name this as controllers. Let's add a new empty controller. So let's choose an API, empty one, and you can give it any name you want. So I'm going to say this identity. So identity controller. Now with this controller, what we need to do here is we need to inject our user manager and also configuration as well. So let's have our user manager in here. So user manager, which takes in identity user. Then we're going to say this is user manager. Let's also have our role manager also, which takes in identity role. Then we're going to say this is role manager. Let's include our I configuration. And we're going to say this is config as well. Okay. So we have these three things in here. Now let's come to our body. And now we're going to have post. So this is post. And now with this, we're going to have our public async task. This will return I action result. So with this result, we're going to say this is authenticate. And this is going to be used for both login and our registration. Let's have our string email. We need our email and string. We need our password. Let's pass this here as parameters. We don't want to carry strings. So we're going to say that this is email. Then we're going to have password. Okay. Now in the body, let's open it. So let's make sure this and that, they are the same. Okay. So we're going to say this is user is equal to, let's have a wait, user manager dot find by email. Let's make sure we have what we need. In case the user comes in and we couldn't retrieve any data, it tells you that this user is a new user. So you want to create it. So we're going to say that if user is null, then we want to return. Let's say, okay, we're going to create new user. So that is, so we're going to have like register. And now this register is a new method. We're going to pass in the email and password. Okay. So email and password. That is when user is null. It means we're going to register. But in case the user it isn't, then we're going to return the same okay. Then that is login. This login is going to return string. That is a token. So this login, all that you need to specify here is get in this user, and this user is going to be the identity user, and close it. So here let's also create method for each. So this, hit on that and let's generate this method. Let's also create this method for the login, and now we have these two private methods. All this for the login, it should be string, so you want to enforce that. And for this, it also should be string, so you want to also enforce that. Okay, so now let's tackle the registration. So if a user wants to register, what do we do? let's just create it. So we're going to say there's a result is equal to, then here you want to have await our user manager dot, we're going to have create async, and with this we're going to specify new identity user. And now with this identity user, all that we need to do here is specify the email as email coming in. We also need this username as the email coming in, and maybe we have password. So we have password in here, and that's equal to this, not email, rather the password. That is all we need to do. Now with this, so this should be this password. This should return. So we're going to say that if result that succeeded, it means user is created. Then if it is created, we want to have a look at an admin role. So let's say we're going to say that this admin role, please go and check it for us. So admin.manager.find by name async. And now here we want to check for admin as a role. So we're going to say that if this admin role is null, then what are we going to do? We want to go ahead and create it. So we're going to say role manager dot create async, and I pass in new identity role. And now with that, let's specify the admin in it. We create that. After creating this, make sure you add this user to it. So we're going to say this user manager dot add to role async. We have it in here. Specify the user that is coming in, and now the role that has been created now as admin. That is all. And here we're going to have else in case this person coming in here, admin role has been created already. Then what are we going to do? So we know that we cannot find any user here. I thought we were inside this login. So we have the email, right? So there's an email. So we can just grab this email. And now here we're going to say that this is an await. Let's put this in a bracket. And I'm going to say this is await. We can have user manager.find by email async. And now specify this email, which is going to get you the user. But you should check for now because it is saying it should be now, but well, you want to also make sure it isn't. So the next thing that we're going to do here is we need to check for the user role. So we're going to say this is also user role, and await. So we have our role manager. This not role manager, we need this manager. So dot find by name, and in this we're going to look up for user role, because here we're specifying two rows in it. So we're going to say that if user role is null, then we want to go ahead. We're going to say await. So role manager dot create async, and you need to specify new identity role, and now specify the user role here. After we are done with that, we can go ahead and now add it. So whether the user here is the user role is there or not. Okay, if it is there, going to get created. In case it isn't, then it's going to get added, because here, in case this is not null, it means user has been created already. And in this case, we're going to add the person straight to it. So we need to provide in the same thing that we copied. So let's grab this. So maybe here we can, let's check if we can remove unnecessary parentheses. Okay, so we can do same in here, and now add the row, and that is all we need to do. So let's use this. Okay, camel case. So we are done with our registration, and at the end of the day, we want to return successful as a string. So that is what we need to do. And now here else, then what are we doing? you want to return unsuccessful. So we can grab this, and in here we can use return unsuccessful. So we have our registration done. Let's go to our login also. Now in our login, since you have the user already created in there, what we're going to do here is we're going to extract the user info and I'll generate a token for that. Okay, so let's also grab a security key. So we're going to say this is, we have a security key, and then that we're going to say this new symmetrical security key. Let's have our encoding. So we need to also encode this. And this should come from system.test. So .utf8. So encoding.utf8 uses .utf8.getByte. And now this get byte, we're going to have our config. Now this config, we can extract authentication. Then we have a key. So this is what we need in here. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we need to also get our credential. So let's have our credential. Now this credential is equal to new sign-in. We have our sign-in credential. We have it. So this is our sign-in credential. Now this sign-in credential, we need to specify a security key and also our algorithm. So security algorithm .hmark256. You want to use this. And let's also get our user claims. So this claims is equal to new array. And now here we're going to have a new claim. Now with this new claim, what we're going to do here is we need to specify the claim type. So here we need an email. Now let's provide this. So we're going to have this from user.email. Then aside from that, we would also need name, right? So maybe you can also say that this name is the same as the email. Okay. Then the last one, let's also include the row. So we're going to say this new claim and claim type dot rows. Now with this row, we're going to say that await. Since we are not having the row in this user, we need to extract this from the user manager. So we're going to say await user manager dot, we can have get rows, which returns all rows of the user. And let's pass in this user. And in that, you want to extract only first or default, because here we know that we're going to have only one in there. So we can get first or default, and we are good. Okay, so we can make sure this isn't null. Then let's go ahead and now create our token. So we have our user claim. Let me create that using this. Okay, camel case. Now let's have our token. So this token that we get is equal to, we're going to have new GWT token. And we need a security token. And now within the token, let's specify the issuer. Now this issuer, we can have config. Then let's extract our authentication section. Authentication section. Then we can have our issuer. Aside from that, we can also go in for the audience. And now it is the same config. Then we can extract our authentication. Then we say this is audience. So we need to, oh, this should be in here. I believe you haven't done what I did. So it should be in this. Okay. So we also have our audience set. Now the next thing that we need here is our claims, and you know we have our claims already. So we need not to worry about this. So that's our claims, and here we have our user claims. So that's our user claims. And also for expired, we're going to set this to null because we haven't added expiry date. Then let's have our sign-in credentials. We have this as credentials also set already. Okay, so that is what we need in order for this to work. Then let's close this. Okay, then let's return, since this function must return a string, let's have a return type. And now this return is equal to new JWT security token handler. Then in that, we're going to write the token that we have in here as a token, and we're going to return it in the form of string. And that is all that we need to do in here. Okay, so we can go ahead and now test this out. So let's start this, and remember the route, it should be API/identity. Then we're going to make a post to this specifying our parameters, and that is all. So a single method is going to handle two functions. Oh yeah, we have an issue here because we haven't added our authentication section in the app-settings.json. So quickly, let's go ahead and do that. We go to our app settings and let's add this section. So we have authentication with our key, and also we're going to have an issuer as an API. There's a gateway, and it's going to consume it by itself. So let's save this. Let's do it again. Alright, so this is ready, and make sure that we have jwt.io so we can verify our token and see the claims that we have both for admin and now the user as well. Alright, so I have to open my Postman, and from the headers, I have this already, so I'm going to clear this off. We're going to start everything. So this should be off. Okay, so let's see if I can get rid of this. If not, I'm going to delete everything from here. Then we start everything afresh. Alright, so I am done. Now you see we're going to make a post to this as an HTTP local host. We have our 7000 as our port. We have an API, and our identity here, it is a controller. And then we are passing our email and our password. Okay, so the first time registration is going to be an admin. So let's click on this to register. Now let's check it out. We must have successful when everything is set. Okay, so we haven't performed migration. Whoa, I believe you've done that, isn't it? That's okay. Let's stop this. And let's set our gateway as a startup in here. Then let's go to package manager console. And in here, let's add migration. So let's update database. Alright, so this is done. Now let's run this again. But before that, we have to set multiple startup projects. So click on configure startup project. Alright, so let's set the multiple startup project. Let's set all to start. And now let's run this. So now we're going to test this. Let's see. Now we should have no issue. Oh, I said it. Not successful. So now we're going to log in. And we must return, or it must return, token. Good. So now let's see. This token here, let's grab this token. Let's go to our Postman. Not our Postman, our JSON Web Token. And we want to verify and check it out. Yes. Check the row here is an admin. And that's what we need. There's a name and an email. Let's also create another one for user. So let's say here we have our user, and that is also user. Then our password is going to be user. Okay, click on this, and it's going to get created. Click on it again. We're going to have our token. So grab this, then in here, check it. The row is what? Is user. So let's see. Now, when we go back to our system, from our configuration for the YARP, from our other API can be accessed by user. Okay, we haven't added the policy yet. Okay, so let's do that. But before we do it, you have to make sure. Let's go and get our tokens. So we have a token. This is for user token. So maybe we can grab this token in here and paste it under the user. Let's make sure we have our admin. And let's also grab our admin token. And this is our admin token. Okay. So in our configuration, let's add our authorization policy. So we can do it from the app settings and in here. So for the product, we want admin to access the product. So we're going to say this is our authorization policy. And what is the policy here? We said this is admin policy. Let's grab this. We go to the order, and we can also specify same, but this time around for the order, we want it to be user. Okay. Now what we have in here, we can also do same to the configuration. So whether you're using the settings, app settings file or using the config class that we created, we can make it happen. Now from here, we can also add authorization policy. Then this is for admin policy. Then same as here, authorization policy. Okay, this is user policy. So we can go ahead and run this. Check it out. So they are ready now. Let's see. So we're going to access our API product. When we check our headers, we have no authentication, or we can even remove this. Okay, so here, let's remove this. Okay, so we have no token. Now when we make a request to this API, we have 401, that is authorized. We need to be authorized. We are not authenticated. Now let's go and add this product API here. It is authorized to only, or is assigned to only administrator. Let's go and add our authorization. And in that, let's make sure we have our, let's use the user first to check it out. Let's make it as bearer and add the token. Now let's make another request, and instead of 401, now we have 403. It tells you that we authenticated, but it is forbidden. We don't have access to that resources. Okay, so let's see. Let's go ahead and change this. Or even with this token, let's change this to other because this is user. Change this to other, and I'll make a call, and it's going to get it because other here needs to be API slash other. There's other API. Okay, so this is get. So that is get. And okay, so too many requests. And let's wait for 20 seconds. Yeah, so let's wait for that. We have to make changes to that. Now let's try this again. So from an other, and there's a user token, and we should get the record. Yes, and we have it. So this is user and admin authenticated. Now let's go and add the admin token. So that is an admin token. Let's go and add it from here. That's for admin. Now when admin makes a request to this order, it's going to be rejected because this order has a policy which requires a row of user. But this doesn't have user row, it has an admin row. So for 20 minutes or 20 seconds pass, if you make a request to this, you have 403 forbidden. Go ahead and I make order to the product. And you should have the data in there. Yes, we have it. So we've seen how to integrate rate limiting and also authentication, actually policy-based authorization in our API gateway using Identity Manager. All right, so that is all I have for you guys. If you have any issue or if you have any question, you can put it in the comment section below. Or if you found this video also helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on .NET 8 and microservices. So catch up again. Until then, take care.